Both of these gentlemen walk with a talk. Like I told you guys earlier this morning, Baba Moudou studied with and practiced with Baba Kilyndi, who is, as far as I'm concerned, a high dose expert. And so he got broken in, not just kind of feeling his way through a dark room, but he got shepherded through the room of high dose world by a legend. And the other one, if you follow his Instagram, you will see Dave with this blue juice and fucking blue cup of tea, and he will drink this big ass blue cup of tea, and he will be blitzed off of like 40 or 50 grams of mushrooms. So both of these gentlemen are high dose experts. Can you please do it for me one more time, please? Give a great big round of applause for Baba Moudou and Dave, Pastor Dave.
Thank you, Reggie. So we're going to sit down for this one. That is real tea. There's nothing else in that that's not food coloring. That is pure mushroom tea. Why it turns blue, we're still trying to figure that out. One of the things that I kind of realized as we've been getting it to come more and more blue is it just the mushroom showing us we're on the right path, and they want us to have this magical-looking elixir to give people. The blueness doesn't necessarily mean that the tea is weaker or stronger, but it's definitely beautiful. Again, this is not food coloring. This is not Photoshop. This is pure, high-dose mushroom tea.
Have you ever? I know you're looking at factors that cause that. You identified any?
Well, a couple, but I can't really tell you what it is. One of the things that we noticed, and this is, this whole event is people that I thought would be interesting to talk to in a bunch of different ways and just kind of let the universe pull it together. But some of the stuff that Dan was doing as far as testing the lemon tech and those sort of things, even testing boiled versus not, I found really interesting, because what seems to be fairly consistent is we start with boiling water in the tea, we pour it directly over the mushrooms, and then we leave it off heat. So it starts boiling, and over 15 minutes it cools down. And we do, when I make it, I do 3 steeps, so 3 separate extracts of the same mushroom. The first steep is really dark, the second steep is a little lighter, and the third steep, you can barely see anything in it. But the temperature and time seems to be the factor. But again, it's pretty, but it's not really the work. I mean, the stuff, and just so you understand, this is just kind of going to be a loose conversation between two people who do a lot of this work. Moudou has a lot more history in it. I've only been doing this since 2019. I had no idea there was even high-dose work until I came across Kilyndi Iyi, which Kilyndi was an amazing person who had been doing this high-dose work for years.
Yeah. So I'd be bereft without saying anything without acknowledging my teacher, my Jegna, Kilyndi Iyi. If you are not familiar with him, I highly encourage you look him up. He left this realm in 2020, but he was a staunch pioneer of high dose. And when I started studying with him, this was the days, late 90s, and at that time the high dose was considered 3.5. Which, these are by individuals like, McKenna and others. But we were questioning that. And this is a caveat that's interesting. The early pioneers, they were very good at wild harvesting. And it's something that me and that Kilyndi deduced. So when you say 3.5, it could have been 3.5 wild harvested, cyanesis. But it's much different than 3.5 golden teacher, which kind of alludes to our previous discussion. So Kilyndi was like, okay, well, what is, a high dose? What is a breakthrough dose? Because what he found is 3.5 of a golden teacher or a B plus or something like that. It did enough to make you feel spiritual, but it didn't break you beyond that. And so we we began to work with many different strains and find out what that high dose amount was and what would take you beyond you identifying with your personal self. Because when we talk about ego dissolution, at a certain point, we have to be willing to let go of all our notions and basically rewrite and reconsider who we are as individuals, as a community, as a society. So that was his initial challenge, and I'll share more because our orientation was through martial arts. So it was really about fighting the inner self, fighting the weak, uncommitted, dishonest self, and to refine that. And so that was a lot of what informed the work. And same thing here, as I do. It's about recalibrating self, not necessarily finding a more comfortable way to exist in an insane situation.
I think we should kind of start off by defining the high dose work, because, and this is a discussion you and I have had for quite some time, is what do we call it? Because what the hell is a high dose? Well, we've started calling it through the church is the breakthrough dose, and part of that has to do with the fact that it's very similar to what people describe with the breakthrough experience of DMT. The difference is the duration. I mean, there's a few differences, but the biggest one is the duration. DMT, the breakthrough dose, is 15 minutes. Psilocybin, the breakthrough dose could be 3 to 4 hours, depending on what you need to go through and how the mushrooms affect you. But the breakthrough dose, as I define it, is where you start to see things. And the beginning of the breakthrough dose is where your eyes are closed and you're seeing amazing things. I can't even tell you what you're going to see. It all depends on what you have to go through, what your work is, what you need to do, what your intent is going into it. But when you close your eyes and you can see more than you can describe.
Yeah, and I think even further, we can recognize a breakthrough dose because closed or open,
Yeah.
you're going through it. So if you find yourself still intrigued by the poster on the wall, you may not have broken through. But at a certain dose, it doesn't matter if your eyes are open or closed. You're experiencing.
Yeah, exactly. So the start is when your eyes are closed and you're seeing things. That's the beginning of the high dose work. By the time you hit 110, 120, 150% of the high dose work, I think that the best way I've heard it described is a computer term for graphics of opacity, how transparent something is. At the lower sides of the breakthrough dose, as you're getting higher and higher, you'll see things in front of you, but it's like ghostly or cloudy. You can tell there's something there, but you can't fully see it unless you close your eyes and then you completely see it. At the really high doses, you were there. There's no question. You see, smell, touch. You are there, period. And those, if you're ready for the work and you know what you're doing and you've worked your way up, those can be incredibly powerful, incredibly amazing experiences. But the key is to not go there accidentally. You got to work your way up.
Yeah, and then also one of the challenges is understanding that anytime you enter into that realm, it's a heroic thing, whether you're doing 2 grams, 3 grams, 15, 20. So this isn't like saying that, oh, you're not getting anything less if you're not taking a heroes or a breakthrough dose. That's definitely not what we're saying. You can get a shitload out of 3 grams. So we don't ever want to elude that. Oh, the only way what we are saying, though, is that there are realms that have yet to be explored. There's liminal spaces that have yet to be mapped out, that there are potentialities in how this can impact the human physiology, human spirit, the human mind that are yet to be defined, and that Kilyndi, to his credit, Dave and myself and others are trying to see what it looks like and what does that mean. It's going to take decades for science to even get, beyond 7 grams, so
yeah.
Part of our citizen scientist work is discovering what do these realms do? How do they impact? And what you find is amazing. It's amazing, and it could be challenging, but it's the most beneficial part of my work with the plant. You know.
Yeah, it's not called the heroic dose for nothing.
Yeah.
One of the big problems, and this is part of the reason this panel was after the potency thing, is one of the big problems is we can't even talk about grams anymore. It's not about, oh, I did 2 grams, I did 5 grams, I did 20 grams. First off, that never mattered. All that matters is that you get the work done that you're trying to do and you remember what you're doing. But really what matters now is knowing how much psilocybin you're consuming relative to what you've consumed. If you know that you've been on 50,000 or 70,000 or 100,000 micrograms, that's a reference point for you now that you can use to go into this work and go deeper while remembering what you do. I think one of the biggest things, well, and let me just say before we get off the topic, you said a very good point on the traditional 3.5 grams, these lower doses that are not the breakthrough dose that we're describing. There's a lot of important work to do there. Like if you want, the way I describe mushrooms working is they affect the border between this world and the next. And the first thing on the other side is your soul. So if you're taking a microdose, it's like putting a little crack in that wall. If you're taking a normal dose, it's like poking a hole, and the more you do, the larger the hole. It's at this breakthrough dose, it's like taking a sledgehammer and breaking down that wall. But regardless, even on the microdose, what's happening is you're getting closer to your soul. And the more people that can get closer to your soul, the better. On the normal doses, if you go in with the right intent, if you go in with the intent to communicate with your soul or to try to understand what you're going through, you will find that you get a lot of answers. I mean, it won't be as vivid as the stuff that we're talking about, and it will be a different experience, but in no way, shape, or form is that not important work. And in fact, the best way to do the high dose work is to do that work and slowly work your way up. It's not well, you heard Dave or Moudou take in 20, 30 grams and let's go do that tomorrow. Do not do that.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
Some of the greatest scientific advancements, whether we're talking about mapping at the helical structure of DNA or hell, the personal computer was a result of lower doses, so it's not a matter of, the more you take, the more you get. This is just another realm in which we explore. The other thing is this is a walk into the unknown, a walk of the alone into the unknown. So it's different too because it's not this is generally like if you're constantly going in or you're very familiar with the realm, you go into the unknown by yourself, which requires a little bit of because once you go at a high level, it no longer supports your belief systems. It no longer is going to confirm what you think is right. It's going to rip all that away, and what you're going to face is what it is. And so now we're talking about post-integration. How you post-integrate? Once again, you have to be able and have the tool sets and the ability and the experience to make peace with it within yourself, and reconcile that. And yes, of course, to link in with larger communities that do it, but it's a different approach than what we call traditional entrances, and it's also shamanic. This is when it becomes impersonal. It becomes no longer about me. It becomes about my community. It may become about my family. It may become about my region. And at that point, that's when you start to have what a bird's eye view of what's going on. So you may spend the entire session and not one episode has anything to do with you. It has everything to do with, your lonely neighbor, the child that needs support, and things of that nature. So it's definitely not a line for individuals who are, let's just say, myopic or self-centered. It's definitely something that's non-personal. It's bigger than that. You're working on a community, group, larger level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point for me to talk about what we've seen as far as the different stages of high-dose work. So as you do a lot of this work, and like what you're talking about, once you've done dozens of these experiences, things change. It's not about you anymore. It's about world events. It's about your neighbor down the street. It's about your friend whose liver might be having a problem. It becomes a whole nother thing that is what the shamans used to do, the real shamans. But before you're ready to do that, there's a few stages you have to get past. The first and most important is getting past the trauma of this life. Before you're ready to go have conversations with God, before you're ready to go talk to interdimensional aliens or, really sit down and have a conversation with your soul, you need to understand why you went through what you did that led you to where you are right now. And for some people, that might be one ceremony. It's not one ceremony for most people. That's very rare. For some people, that might be a dozen ceremonies. That might be 20 ceremonies. It all depends on what you have to unpack. And during that phase, what I always recommend is people use intents that are the biggest question on their mind that nobody else could answer for them. And this could be in the case of suicide, which I talk about this work as a cure to suicide. And I'm not just saying that, but it's important that you go through multiple of these sessions at the breakthrough dose to get to that. But once you reach the breakthrough dose, one of the very common things is feeling like you're dead. So if you wanted to die and you feel like you're dead and you realize things keep going, you now have to understand it. So if the question is as big as why don't I want to live, or why did I have to go through this sort of thing, the big key is to focus on what will help you move forward in this life during that first phase. The other really important thing, when you're talking about any intent with mushrooms, you are not in control. If you go into a mushroom trip with the intent of, how do I control my addiction? What you're going to learn is control was the wrong word, and that's not the right intent. You are not in control. How do I understand? How do I overcome? How do I accept? In a very respectful way, understanding that you're having direct communication with your soul. You can ask it a question and you can move forward. But if you think that you're in control, it's going to keep smacking you around until you realize you're not the one in control.
Yeah.
So, getting through that first phase is really important.
Yeah. And then often, like you said, getting comfortable with the idea of your own physical mortality, you know. And then once you identify your essential essence of who you are beyond your body, then you get comfortable with the notion that, no, this party doesn't stop, and that's when you get emboldened to keep going back.
Yep.
Once you understand that, I'm gonna sound like a Christian evangelical, the good news, you never die, once you embrace that, but it's tough because you're dealing with, there are times when you will deal with, okay, this is what life would look like without me here, And once you get through that and you understand that there is no necessarily pause to this thing, then it makes it much more enriched. And even when you get over that hurdle of your own physical mortality, it's still a challenging trip because once again, you're not there getting lauded by the Orisha or by the angels of how divine you are. You don't have a guru telling you how to realign your chakras or how to breathe properly. No, oftentimes they're showing you some things, that are not necessarily comfortable. And you have to, process it, learn from it and move on. So by the end of your journey, it's not something that was like, ooh, that was great, I'm going next week. No, oftentimes it's something you have to commit to as a community healer, as in that shamanic tradition. There are times when I'm like, And for me, it's usually like a biannual thing, maybe twice a year, but it's like, fuck, I need to go in and really see what's going on. And it's like cleaning the garage out. Who looks forward to doing that? But you know you have to do it.
You know you have to do it. You don't have a choice. You got to do it. And you don't want to do it again when you're done. Like, you want to get some shit done and it be done for a while. I think the high dose that I did where Moudou was my sitter, I'm sure I came up asking him if I could never do mushrooms again. Because that's a very typical thing that I say after I come on. I beg the person in front of me if I can never do mushrooms again, and they always laugh at me and say, no, you're going to have to do them more. But this high dose work it's not fun. Yeah. There's many words to describe it. Amazing, powerful, life-changing. There can be times that there are some fun things to do it, but you're not doing this for entertainment. You're doing this to go in and get work done.
Yeah.
And so that first phase, again, it's all about you and getting through yourself. The next phase is understanding what you are outside of this body, because we all have souls. Mm-hmm. You know, every single person in this room has a soul. There is a reason why you came here. There's a reason why you're in this room right now. You all have a soul. Your soul is really the thing that's in control. Mm-hmm. And the more communication you can have with it and the more you can understand it, the better life will feel. Beyond if you understand your soul is something that has more work to do on the other side, that's when you end up getting into phase 3, which is a lot of the stuff that Kilyndi used to talk about, of the interdimensional travel and dealing with all sorts of different entities. You know, but you got to be ready for it. So first you got to get past everything that's holding you back, and you know that's much easier said than done. And for some people, it'll take them years to even get there.
Yeah, and then you'll have the third stage that we're talking about, the existential crisis, when you sit there and you actually had the audacity to question Jehovah. The hell are you doing, man? You know, so this is when we say beyond spirituality, because spirituality has been commodified. I'll be the first to tell you, most of the spiritual systems are results, like yoga is a result of colonialism. Don't let anybody tell you that. Most of the stuff you learned was British, European athletic poses, and the soldiers who were conscripted to fight for the British Army couldn't make enough money. They would make extra money on the side by playing flutes to snakes and doing fake levitation and teaching the foreigners who came to visit about this new spirituality. And so in a lot of regard, what we know with spirituality is a commodified, plastic-covered hustle. You know, and it makes a lot of money. It's great. But it doesn't move the needle. Humans are still suffering. Humans are still in massive ignorance. We're still a warlike culture. And so one of the reasons we push beyond and into the deeper realm, because our operating system as human beings is inadequate. And we have to create a new archetype. And so what that means is that all of these notions that we've been taught, you know, I was very versed in the Orisha and the traditional African system. So in that system, you know, you just like any system, whether it's the Kabbalah, you taught about this hierarchy of these divinely inspired beings. And so when you go in a higher realm and you encounter these beings, of course, you're taught to prostrate yourself and beg for their mercy. But at the higher level, no, you sit there and you engage with them. And this is how the ancestors did it. This is why Jacob wrestled with an angel. It wasn't negotiating. You weren't prostrating. This is why Moses negotiated with God. No. What is in it for us? But see, this is an orientation with the divine that we haven't been taught, because we've been taught to be observers and not actors in the spiritual world. Observers and not realizing that, you know, contrary to what we've been taught, the road is the middle road. And so just a quick analogy, you imagine you're born to royalty, but both your parents pass. And you have one uncle, elder, that's heavily into the church. And they're going to teach you all things in divine, all things wonderful, but they're also going to violate you. And then on the other end of the family, you have that wonderful uncle or whoever that's going to protect you, but they're in the streets, and they're going to show you how to fight and carry a knife and handle your business in the streets, but they're going to give you a severe alcoholism. And so although they both bring great things to you, neither one of them are in for your best interest. So whether you are, down with all religion and this and that, and I'm a materialist, I don't believe in that, yeah, well, that's your uncle that shows you the streets. And if you saying, oh, it's all about love and light, well, that's your uncle, that's the priest, but neither one of them are in your best interest. Neither one of them are trying to put you in your sovereign divine power. So when we talk about the Greek krakion and all of these ancient traditions, it wasn't about going to Apollo and kneeling down to him. No, it's about negotiating and arguing with Apollo. Like, our fields need seed, our field needs water. And then, the deity will say, well, do this, and then I'll give you water. And then they'll come out of waking state and do that. But it never was a prostrating thing. But this is a modern, contemporary idea of what we call modern spirituality. I'll show you how to get closer to Shiva for $39.95.
And that's the big difference with this work, is we want you to listen to us just so you can do it safely and have some context, but this is about your experience. This is not about what we think. You can have your own experience. You can understand these things firsthand yourself. I mean, it does take some bravery. You got to work your way into it, but you don't need to read a book. You can go ask your soul what's really going on. And something that you just kind of threw out there that's something I want to address, the love and light shit, that's racist. Not everything in the light is good.
We endorse colonialism and imperialism in the name of love and light. To hell with that.
Not everything in the darkness is bad. And not everything is black or white.
Yeah.
When you hear somebody coming at you, oh, psychedelics are all love and light, I mean, sure, they have good intents.
That is classical Luciferian, the light bearer. See, we understand Lucifer was the light bearer. He would have you walk blindly into that light right off a cliff. And that's what happens in the love and light realm. It's Luciferian, but most people don't understand that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm not saying that everybody who comes up to you and is talking about love and light is wrong. There's plenty of love and light out there. But to think that it's only love and light and there's not love in darkness and there's not hatred in light, you're not seeing the picture of what's real. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm talking about when you go into these spaces, you have the experiences yourself. You learn firsthand, oh, that thing that's dark and scary, that's just part of me. And it's a good part of me. It doesn't have any ill will, it's just dark and scary.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it bad. I mean,
Yeah.
just because you're ugly means you're a bad person. That's,
Right.
Sorry, little tangent on the love and light.
No, that's true. I mean, because it's about sovereignty of the human spirit. So as long as you serve our old systems, beliefs, deities, all of these things, you as a human species will now have the sovereignty to decide on our own about how we live as a human species. We'll say, hey, you didn't make your offering to Shiva, we stone you to death. Or you're not a good Christian, therefore that's one side, that's the Luciferian,
Yeah.
Then you had a materialist side, like, well, you can't afford to live here, so we just make you houseless, And so neither one of these are beneficial to humans. They have their uses in measure, but they are not to be the master controllers. So we have people that are capital driven, we have people that are spiritually driven, and we see what they do to our society. You take an evangelist preacher and a hyper-capitalist, sit them on the stage and tell me they're good for humanity.
Yeah,
So-
we just want you to have your own experience.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about, because that evangelist speaker is not going to tell you your truth. And the capitalist is sure as hell not going to tell you your truth. Neither of
Can't
those.
afford it.
Yeah, you can't afford for him to tell you your truth. I mean,
Yeah.
your truth is your truth, and the only one who can answer it for you is your soul. And if you don't mind, I just want to kind of describe my understanding of what your soul is. So I've heard this same thing described in a bunch of different ways, as far as even data structures and rays of light and a bunch of different analogies. The visual that I like to give people is an octopus with an unlimited number of legs. And each time it sticks a leg into space and time, it becomes one of us. So we are both the octopus, but we're only a leg. We have independence. We can move around, and it is our job to find things in our environment to set us on the right path. But we are not in control. The octopus is, and we are the octopus. But understanding what your soul actually is and why it came here and what you as an individual are supposed to do, that's what religion should be able to answer. And there's no book that's going to be able to tell you that. There's no pastor that's going to be able to tell you that. The only one you can learn that from is your soul.
Yeah. And why is this so important to us? Because as we move on, I call this thing feather dusting. The trend of psychedelics is going to be in a feather dusting. All you need is 0.1 thousandth of a milligram in this special whatever I'm going to give you for $500, not moving the needle of who we are as individuals, of human beings, not moving the needle of who we could and should be. So a lot of people, like we talk about ayahuasca. Ayahuasca came out of a high-dose mushroom experience. The mushroom told them how to make ayahuasca from high-dose mushrooms. So what we're talking about tapping into an information system that destroys the notion of individual genius, and which is what we've been taught. Oh, this person's a luminary. This person's a prodigy. Oh, they're just brilliant. No, the greatest minds on the planet throughout history tell you that there's a realm in which knowledge is egalitarily distributed to us all if we learn to tap it. The ancients used to call it the muse or inspiration. Therefore, now we're talking about democratization, where it's no longer with this false meritocracy of this person's more valuable than this person is more valuable than this person, which is a false notion. And that's part of why we are champions of this high dose work, so we can reset the notion of this false meritocracy that controls our planet. Because we've been taught, oh, well, they're rich because they're smart, they're on time, they're thrifty, and they're hard workers. Yeah. Or they're powerful because they never tell a lie and they always spell correctly, and these are lies. And so on the opposite side, we're taught, oh, you don't have a leverage in society because you just didn't get the 4.0, or you didn't take the job you're supposed to take. No, what's happening is a suppression of all of our capabilities, all of our potentialities. And so the high dose work is what I say is the work of the people with a candle. We light each other's wicks. We push each other to achievement, to greater expression of who we are individually. Because we're not in the stands, we're on the stage. We are not observers, we are actors in this world. And so high dose work does that, and it breaks down that myth of guru, priest, leader that you have to prostrate to be the intermediate between you and the divine. Everybody has a right to access the divine on their own and have an individual interaction with it without the intermission or intercession of someone who may know better. So that's why it's important to me and you, yeah.
I mean, you would almost think like we had talked about what we were going to talk about, but we don't. We do this work too much, and we know we can sit on stage and just talk and it be entertaining. I just want to touch on something you said because I think there's an important point. We're not saying that microdosing, there's no merit to it, but microdosing isn't going to introduce you to your soul. There's a time and a place for everything, and if you're finding that microdosing is helping you, more power to you. But it doesn't need to cost you $500. Like when you get into where the medical system is going to want to push things, if you look at the price of some of these cancer drugs and some of these other things, I mean, it's just insane to expect somebody's paying $100,000 a month for their medications. I mean, what sort of world are we in? The mushrooms are really easy to grow yourself. They pop up all around us. There's places you can go to get them. They're a lot more accessible and they're a lot more affordable. You're talking about something that, for $500, these days you can get about a pound of mushrooms in the right place. So that's a good year plus supply. I mean, even even at the highest amount that I was doing of about an ounce a month, I mean, which nobody should ever do that amount of mushrooms, I mean, that would still be over a year's supply for me. So, you know, when you're talking about these therapy centers and the things that the medical system want to push, I support all of them. I want to see them exist for the people who can pay for them and for the science to be done and for the research to be done. But these are our birthright.
Exactly.
They were put on this planet for us. They are our access to our soul. They are our access to God. They are our access to understanding what really reality is all about, what we're supposed to do in life, why we're here, every big question that every single person has. There's not a person alive who hasn't at least at some point thought, what am I supposed to do with my life? You know, if you can go have a conversation with your soul, there's somebody who can tell you that. It came here for a reason. It has something that you need to do and you're supposed to do. You just need to know that you can talk to it and there's a way to talk to it.
Yeah. And then when we look at it historically, there's been an ebb and flow. There's been, I mean, we can document over the last 150,000 years in which which I call the divine feminine energy, makes itself known. The divine feminine energy, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow, but it manifests itself in the unknown and the mysteries. And we know that modern society suppressed that. And so now we see a upheaval of that, what we call the sacred dark feminine energy. And so if we look at it historically, we can see this ebb and flow of when society began to embrace sovereignty of the human spirit, and then we saw the forces of repression come out. You can see it in every religious system. Many people don't know that there used to be an Allat that was pre-Islamic, that was a female deity. You know, people don't know that. Just like people don't know that there was a whole host of people in the pantheon of Christianity, women that have been written out. And so this represents a play between polarities, and not to be swayed back and forth, but to create equilibrium means that we embrace both the walking by day and night. And this is what this represents. It represents an embrace of not only the material realm, but the spiritual realm in equal balance so that we can be healthy as a society. Also, there's a bottleneck where there's not enough of us to facilitate, teach, educate, and support. Each of us could probably have 1,000, 1,500 people, and it's still not enough of us to help get this information out, to help heal community, build community, create community, redefine economy and such. And so part of the reasons we're super adamant about it is because we see ourselves as just part of a growing village. And one of the things we want to do is try to share what we know, learn from you guys, and then empower each other so that we can be better stewards to our larger communities.
And reawaken this lost knowledge. You know, this is not, you know, Fox said this is a new religion. This is not a new religion. This is the oldest religion that has existed. This is the first thing that awakened us to that there was something more to this reality. Mushrooms are older than us.
Yeah.
We evolved out of mushrooms, and we're more closely related to the mushroom than we are plants. So these here they're older than us. They've been around forever, and they helped create us. And they are a tool that we can use to understand what we really are. But we just need to reawaken this knowledge. There's been this. There's many things that have been issues with the psychedelic movement over the years, but one of them is that this topic is taboo. The very first time we had this event, it was with Kilyndi Iyi, and you know he was known for talking about 40 to 50 grams of mushrooms in a single dose. There were people in the community who came out and wanted us to cancel the event. They said nobody can talk about high dose mushrooms. Don't talk about it. Don't do it. Don't even mention it. we did the event anyway, and my response to them is, look, if you don't talk about it and people accidentally end up in these spaces, they're not going to know what's happening to them. We need to talk about this.
Yep.
People need to know how to use these tools, how to do it safely, responsibly, and get what they're trying to get out of it.
If we looked at 30, 40 years ago, with the latest, with the height or the Woodstock movement and such as that 50, 60 years ago, what did we get out of that? We got an ecological movement. We got an anti-nuclear proliferation movement. We got a racial solidarity movement. We lasted shortly, but it's still thriving out here. We've had an economic justice movement. Think of all the movements that came out of the initial introduction, and this was to high school, college-age students. And so one of the reasons that this is a threat is because it does cause social change from the bottom up. And so it is a threat to those who wish to maintain what exists. And so part of why we're doing this work is because we need to create a new expression of what it means to be human beings. So if you are interested in upholding the system the way it is, I would suggest you don't use mushrooms. Maybe drink alcohol. You know, that's what it's made for. If you are an imperialist, just stick with your stout IPA and, you know, pray to your creator and pass the ammo. But if you're trying to create a new world, this is what this is for. This is not for the squares.
Well, look, honestly, to me, this is for everybody. They just need to know it. You know, the fact is that you have a soul that came here for a purpose. There's some reason that you exist. This wasn't just an accident. And there is a way for you to know what that is, but you have to be brave enough and have the right tools and know what you're doing. And if you do it, you can actually find out firsthand yourself. You know, you don't listen to us except for listen to what we're saying to be safe, because that's what we want you to do. But to have your own experience and to understand the truths of this world in a way deeper than you can ever imagine possible, there is a way to do it, and it's as easy as eating some mushrooms.
Yeah, and then my last point is on citizen scientists. Yeah. You know, even some of the most profound neurologists and psychologists don't have a grasp. And so it's some of you in this audience that could run circles around some of these psychologists in terms of understanding the interaction of psychedelics and resetting the mind and brain-body connection. So there's also a need for more citizen scientists, because there are discoveries being made every day, just like we were looking at the lemon tech, we're looking at the dosage, and science is not going to move quick enough for us to get the information we have. So part of approaching it responsibly is also being a citizen scientist, going in responsibly, respectably, being diligent about your note-taking and what you observe and sharing it with larger community, because there are not enough scientists who are studying this, and your testimony, your attribution of how powerful this is going to help legitimize what this is about.
Right, and your experience in doing it,
yeah.
Right? I mean, the things that we talk about through this work, you know, what's amazing, the very first time me and Moudou did a talk together was a similar situation where we didn't really talk about it, we just got on stage, and you would think we were like best friends forever, because we are, but that has more to do with the work, and we're just speaking the same truths that came out of this work. So do we need to sit down and have a conversation before we sit on stage and talk about all the stuff we do? No, because we're doing the same stuff and we know the same truths. But when it comes to the citizen science and doing the research yourself, that's one, it's the most important for you as an individual. You're researching yourself, understanding what you are and what you need to do in life. All of that is something that's very personal to you, and the dosage will be personal to you. The same amount of mushrooms that's going to affect you is going to affect me differently. You just need to know what you're using and what you're doing and keep notes. And the scientists want that. They want you to do that because they want to work with us. I mentioned earlier that UCSF wants to study us in the wild, and I'm really excited about that. So if you have your journeys for them to study, they're going to love it.
Yeah.
And it really excites me over the next year to hear what Robin Carhart Harris will talk about next year about all the stuff that he's learned about studying us in the wild.
Yeah, and so with that, there are no experts in this. And anybody tells you they're an expert, they're lying. So this is an amazing pioneer, democratization of knowledge in which we all can contribute. You know, there's 16-year-olds who are creating new strains and things that glow in the dark and all kind of stuff. Yeah. So we can all contribute to this canon of knowledge and be empowered by that. So,
and you know, I mean, we might be two of the more knowledgeable people in the world about these doses, but neither of us would say we're experts. Like, we've been shown a lot of stuff, and we're trying to share that stuff, and we're trying to spread the knowledge, but to just say, I'm an expert and I know everything about mushrooms, I mean, that's, if you are, I haven't met that person in the world. Hopefully somebody will reach that point at some point, but actually what you learn through this work more than anything else is that you'll never know everything. There's just too much knowledge. There's more than you could ever bring back. And I think Reggie wants us to wrap it up. Moudou and I will be speaking tomorrow with our own talks, and if you guys have a bunch of questions for us and you want to know more about this work, please come tomorrow. There's plenty of tickets still available, and we've been passing out free tickets left and right. So if you really want to come and you can't afford it, just tell us. We'll make sure you're here. But thank you, Moudou.
No, thank you. And y'all make sure I'm sure you know, meet each other, share information, each one teach one. So.
Can y'all give them a nice big round of applause?